You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
Seattle 1-3-2.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider. Breaking news, Seattle wins 3-2. Thank you very much, Matt, for that. We'll talk about that a little bit at the beginning of the show. I got a couple of messages on Twitter with a little bit of confusion about this game, so we'll be sure to make a little bit of mention for that. Ashley should be joining us pretty shortly. She was running a little bit late with our modified start time this week, so thanks everyone for rolling with that. As I say, usually at the beginning of the show, we come to you pretty much every Monday. This week is one of those differences. Nothing bad. I was just talking with Matt before the show started that we had a big weekend last week with soccer in the zoo with Baby Roo and Lady Boss, and came back, and Baby Roo came down with some strep throat is what ended up being, but didn't have a good night, and so just didn't have it in me for the late night shenanigans, so fantasy shenanigans. So postponed it. It's all good. Trying to find some of the questions that came here. Yeah, there's a couple of questions to be sure to cover. But yeah, we're all here. Thanks everybody. Thanks for rolling in. How does the volume sound? How do the levels sound with you guys listening to us right now? That's a little bit hot right there, I think. And you can go ahead and talk to Matt so we can get the feedback from the people.
Hey, how are you, everybody? Hi, Reed. Good to see you.
I think we're good.
As always.
Matt was worried he might be too loud, so he's doing a little bit something set up. So
we're not loud enough.
Or not loud enough. We'll see. Great, Gene. I can always depend on Gene to let us know about the levels. So yeah.
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, Ashley said she'd be about 10 minutes late 13 minutes ago, so she should be here very shortly, I would expect so. But we will go ahead and get started. Ashley will come in. We'll get everything switched over with let me get social is out right there. So we've got that shared. If you would be so kind, do always appreciate sharing that. It's out on Twitter and out on the Discord. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. You can always like and subscribe here. Hit the notification bell if you want to find out when we do go live with our little niche MLS fantasy community right here. So much fun. And yeah, like I said, we come to you pretty much every Monday. A little bit different this week. Just making sure everything is sorted for all of you.
Recording in progress.
There we go. I feel like it's gotten a little bit better now that I hit the record button so that you all can hit it. Yes, thank you, Gene. Because you all get to hear it say recording in progress, and I feel like that's fun. It's our fun. Maybe that should be like the tagline, like MLS Fantasy Insider recording in progress. We should send that out there. All right. Well, then let's get this started. When Ashley comes, we'll just pick up for her. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of Round 11 of the 2024 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by MLS Schedules, where makeup games don't count as double game weeks. No. Actually, brought to you by the amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreon community. It's because of you that we are able to keep this project going. You can find out more about our Patreon over at patreon.com/MLSFI. I'm your host, Reed Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partner in fantasy, soon, Ashley Savage. She'll be joining us shortly after the podcast starts. But we'd also like to welcome our very special guest, Matt Wotesco, who is joining us from the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord server, one of our top players. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I should say AKA Wojo on the server, so if you see him out there, that's who we're talking about. Matt joined us earlier in the season as he was killing it, and he is continuing to kill it. Did you have the highest score that round, or were you just leading in the leagues at that point?
just leading in the
Just leading
leagues.
the leagues.
I've never gotten the high score for the week. It's usually I'm just high enough apparently.
That's all it takes is just
Yeah.
being high enough, because oftentimes those highest scores take some real shenanigans to get their like crazy defender picks that I know Christian pulled off a few weeks back. So fun times right there. Well, like I said, Ashley will be joining us momentarily, as she is coming in a little bit late for work with the different start times. So I'm going to start real quick with one quick update. I did get one question about this on Twitter, worked it into the brought to you by joke at the beginning of the show today. As we all know, today there was a makeup game between Philadelphia and Seattle, and clearly when you look at the fantasy schedule for round 11, that game is not there. So I had one question come through on Twitter asking, why is this not a double game week? And that there's a two-part answer to that. And so from the point of view of what impact does playing two games in the same game week have on players and rotations and lineups, this is a double game week. So definitely thinking about Philadelphia and Seattle will be part of what we're talking about during this episode. However, the way that the game is programmed and that it's able to be modified and changed does not let the makeup games get added into the system. So even though Seattle and Philadelphia did play today, Tuesday, that game was not able to be added into the fantasy game. So just a quirk of this system that's not able to happen. And so those players will not be getting multiple points. There's no modification that's going to be made for any goals or actions done and earned tonight. But Philadelphia and Seattle will still play later in this round, and they will earn those points as single game week teams. So I know probably clear to a lot of people because it's not in the game, but that was a question, and so I at least wanted to provide the explanation as to why that you didn't see that added for this week. So we are going to get started now with recapping round 10, which I saw a lot of great scores on Twitter being shared. If you're in chat, go ahead and share your score right now. Would love to see how you did. And Matt, let's just start with you. How did your round 10 go?
So I kind of had I don't want to say I had a rough one, but if you look at kind of where I am in the rankings, which thankfully is in a good spot right now. It was like if you look at the scores around me, I didn't do near as well. You see a lot of in the 100s, 110s kind of thing, and I ended up with a 97, which was a little bit low for what I would have liked. So, but 97, I'm not going to complain too much. Made a couple of, I made a couple of gambles. I did not go with Benteke, who did pretty well. So that's kind of one of the big differentiators between my score and some of the other ones. And then also the other one, really one that I would have done normally was having Brooks Lennon, who was one of the few clean sheets for the week. And I did not have him, and he would have put me up over 100 easily, probably 105 or so. But still sitting at 5 overall, which again, no complaints here. Just happy to be there. Just happy to be there. Sitting up there with like a super competitive bunch of people. Like I'm sure the top 100 are probably pretty tight, and there's a lot of movement. So it's fun. It's competitive. I like it.
What about some of your takeaways from this round?
Yeah. So some of my takeaways, players who impressed me were, Denny Bwanga. His we talked a little bit about it the prior week, was his impressive home record. If you look through his game records, 5 of his 6 home games were double digit points. His ceiling is super super high at home, and I mean he showed up again, with a really great week. I think he had 10. But still, I mean, if you look at his home record, that's where he's scoring all his goals. And he looks like he's heating up a little bit, which is good to see. Another player who impressed me, I mentioned him, was Brooks Lennon. I mean, I think arguably the top tier by himself, probably. I know Kai Wagner is usually up there, but this season so far, Brooks has kind of been on a level of his own as far as having a really high ceiling, and still hitting a floor as well. He hit despite not actually being chalk. I know a few people had him, but away to Chicago was not a super popular pick, but he's still showing up. Santi Rodriguez is on a tear. He's had the NYCFC's had a pretty nice long homestand, so they've had about five or so at home, 4 or 5, and he's averaging like almost 14 key passes a match, and it just started pretty recently during the homestand, and so it's kind of nice to see him kind of step forward after a slow start. And then another slow start was Thiago Almada, who looks like he's getting his floor back. I know a lot of people were kind of worried about him at the beginning of the season, but he barely had a preseason with Atlanta. He was on international duty, and I think it just took him a little bit to kind of get into play. And he had 7 this week, real quietly. He'll do that at times, especially in some of those away matches where he'll just all of a sudden he's got 7 points without a goal contribution, and so it looks like he's kind of getting that floor back that we all expect from him. So it's, as an Atlanta fan, of course, that's good to see. Some of my thoughts about the teams. Austin's won 4 of their last 5, so maybe they're not as bad as we thought, are they? I know some of the metrics are still a little iffy on them, but I mean, you can't deny those results for the last 5. I want to shout out RSL in Minnesota. I don't think they're getting as much love as they should. They're both quietly putting together solid seasons, both attacking and defensively, I think. So I want to shout out to them. And then, is it time to sound the alarm on Orlando and New England? Those are 2 teams that we've talked about having poor, especially defensive seasons, but they are just, is the talent there? Is it the coaching? Like, what's happening? It's going to be hard to be picking from these teams if they're putting in these type of performances. So those are just some of the thoughts I had, Reed.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out about Orlando, because I know that was a team that we had mentioned last week on the show as potentially having some defensive options and potentially having a goalkeeper for stacking up against Toronto as they were coming off of that Canadian Championship game, and that definitely did not go how some of us had hoped. I know for myself, I actually I was dealing with some budget issues, moving some things around because of what I wanted, and I ended up going with Kai Wagner and not Lennon, and bringing in Thoralson from Orlando, so I did not do well there. Overall, though, I ended up with 110 with my points. Had a big climb in the overall ranks. Week rank 153, so that's great. I think if you got in the 1-teens, you likely, depending on where you were in the rankings, I think if you got in the 1-teens, then you likely saw increases to your score. High 90s very well could have, depending on where you were in the ranks, and had some climbing. I won almost all of my head-to-head, so big shout out to Santa Fe Calientes for beating me with 114 to 110, patron right there. So fantastic results for that for me, because I do like the head-to-heads so much. The way it played out is my defense did not do as well for me this round. I went in with the early keeperoo, going with John McCarthy, just because I was so unsure about defenses. I figured, let me at least preview some points there, and I had zero faith in LAFC, and so I went with that. That Hail Mary did not play out, and then I had Freese as my backup, did not play out as well. Wagner, Thoralson didn't pay out for me either. I did get clean sheet from Columbus, so that worked out, and then all of my attackers pretty much paid off. I had Heel on the bench who I was able to work in, and then I had Almada, I had Acosta, I had Rodriguez. I did go with Benteke. I felt obligated to go with Benteke, even though I was going to anyway, because when I was speaking on Holding the High Line with Matt Pollard, the Colorado podcast, he asked me like who needed to be there, and I said I think some people were sleeping on Benteke, and that he absolutely needed to be in your fantasy team, and going against a weakened Seattle, and he came off with 14 points, so that was fantastic. I had questioned Boanga. People did talk me into it during the show, and so I ended up going with that Messi, Boanga, Benteke front line, got the Messi captain, and so was a good round. I think I enjoyed that as well. Coming from,
I do want to throw out, Reed, that Benteke's 2 braces that he's had this season, or multi-goal games, I should say, have all happened with red cards, in games with red cards. So
I will take it.
I'm just throwing that out there. I'm obviously you take the points, but
yeah,
that does take a certain amount of luck to it. So I'd be amiss if I didn't throw that out there. I know there's a lot of Benteke love due to his XG that he's had this season has been pretty high.
No,
so
absolutely.
I don't want to totally take away from him, but I mean, I think we do need to look into that. Like that needs to be in the context of the conversation as well.
And it was a critical red card that has since been rescinded. So if you did not know, the red card against Fry was rescinded. I thought it was kind of questionable when I saw, because I was at the Cincinnati Colorado game this past weekend, as I had mentioned before, and so I was basically just kind of checking scores at halftime and then checking scores at the end of the game. And so I checked it at halftime, saw the red card, and I messaged Ashley, and I was like, what? And then when I got to see it after the game, I saw some of the videos. I was like, that questionable. And so good to hear that was rescinded. But no, absolutely played a fact. Which part of some thoughts I have from this past round. Also, that Dallas game, early red card in the Dallas game. Dallas came away with one of the rare clean sheets. So, and we have not been high on Dallas. Some of their injured players are back. Some of their key players are still injured. So, I just want to point that out as yes, absolutely take that either with a grain of salt or at least take that under advisement that there was an early red card for Houston and they played a man down for the majority. It's 5th minute in, so the entire game basically they played with that as well. I was very surprised. I know your Atlanta team did not come away with the result that you would have liked to have seen. I was very surprised by that as well, and share the pleasure in seeing that Almada got that score with that 0-0 tie. I'm honestly not sure how to break that one down. It was a road team coming to home, but I still don't rate Chicago very high. It looked like Atlanta had all of the advantages with all of the stats, and they just couldn't put it away. So I think under regular circumstances, it was a regular circumstance, so I can't even really go that way, but all of the odds were in their favor, and they just didn't finish. But everything was still swayed towards Atlanta, so when I see that game, I'm disappointed, but I still think it shows that Colorado is allowing a lot of shots. They're not getting a lot of quality shots, and so they're still, Chicago, not Colorado. Colorado did well. Good game. Very good game. Chicago allowed those actions to happen, and so I am not reneging or changing my thoughts on betting against Chicago.
Yeah, I think just the real quick on Atlanta, I even have trouble analyzing them a lot of times. Some of it's obviously the home team bias that often comes with being a fan, but just some of it's also like there's the performances themselves. You looked at, I mean, I certainly wasn't expecting a clean sheet. They tend to switch off at times on defense, but I definitely thought the attack should have been a little stronger. And so, but just the road, like they talked a good game the week prior. Pineda did as coach, and they just didn't look like they showed up offensively. So I don't know exactly what to make of that, but I tend not to take too many of their players away from home if I can help it. Like I said, Lennon usually has a pretty good floor just because he's so involved in the attack, and that's not pretty uncommon for even just an outside back. But yeah, and so other than that, I try I try to stay away from them at home or when they're not at home.
Yep. No, it makes sense. The home advantage is very real. And welcome Ashley joining us now. She has come in. Perfect timing. We're just talking about takeaways, so you have not missed it. For me to wrap some things up, I was very close to the field with my seats this weekend, and so I saw the Yedlin injury happen live. He was definitely. I had a question that came through the Discord about him. He was noticeably limping, and it was definitely difficult after that challenge happened. Questionable challenge, I will add. So I don't know if he's going to miss any games. Depends on if that was precautionary or what. But it was definitely, he felt that it was a noticeable limp and he was in some pain. So I would not be surprised if Yedlin does miss one or two due to some recovery time. Other than that, I do want to call out, we did sort of mention Mukhtar and Nashville as a potential team to look at going against San Jose. That did pay out. Mukhtar got the lone goal, though I think with how we've been betting against San Jose, we would have thought that it should have been more, and I think does still bring in some question to the bite that Nashville has going forward. So, Ashley, we'll throw it to you to see how you did and what your general takeaways were, and then we're going to wrap things up with just a general talk about clean sheets and defenders, because I had several questions on Twitter about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies for the tardiness. Thanks, guys, for running it without me. I had a fine week. I had a 109. I'm still 21 overall somehow. I keep just kind of shuffling between like high teens, low 30s, which still feels strange. I'm not sure how I'm maintaining that, if I'm being completely honest. I won all my head-to-heads except against Tyler, who had an absolutely monster round with a 120. So I'll take that L proudly. He just crushed it. Some obvious takeaways for me was Messi. I think I've seen occasional conversations of people saying, should we captain somebody else to be different? And my answer is absolutely not. Like, I think that that's insane. Most weeks, definitely this past round. So it was great to see him have. I believe that was his highest goal contribution return since coming into the game. So it was really nice to see him hit so well. Benteke versus terrible Seattle defense, per my prediction. I also saw conversations of Benteke or Carranza, and I was very pro Benteke, which felt awful, but also smart with everyone that Seattle was missing in that back line. So it was nice to see Benteke hit. I honestly feel like if you kind of scroll through some of that top 50, some of the biggest kickers were who went Carranza and who went Benteke, because they were both great choices. And I think almost everyone else had Denis Bouanga and Messi in those upper rankings, at least, I mean. And so I honestly feel like the Carranza or Benteke debate made a big difference. And then, yeah, I'll echo what you said. Mukhtar finally hit. This was a round I wasn't betting on him. I didn't like the way he'd looked. I didn't like the numbers he'd had. I wasn't quite ready to hop on board. So I regretted not having him, and I'm glad to see him hit. Lucho with another monster of a round. And then just some general takeaways. It was very strange to watch the Galaxy lose their glitter and sparkle. I was able to watch, that was one of the only games I was actually able to watch over the weekend. And it was just shocking how bad they looked with really only missing Jovic, really. And it was just such a different team. So I'm kind of, we've been really high on them on this show. And I was getting ready to come on here, today and talk about, I think I even made a comment to Reed, like, well, I'll have at least 3. I'd have more if I could against Seattle next weekend. But I don't know. I'm not saying they're not still fantastic, but as we'll get to, Puig is out with yellow cards, and they just looked different. And so I'm wondering if we're taking a turn there. And then I just got to shout out the Columbus defense, who looked legit even when rotated. They've been kind of on our radar, kind of like silently succeeding because there's been so much rotation in that back line because of CONCACAF. And so we haven't regularly picked them, but they have put up some pretty good defensive performances. Montreal's not a fantastic offensive powerhouse, and they have so many people out, but still, to be rotated and pull out a shutout again was impressive. And then I was so excited to add this in here. One of the only other games I was able to watch was the Timbers Galaxy game. I last minute tinkered away from the Lloris keeperoo and did the McCarthy front end, which I didn't really believe in either of them, but I just thought one of the things I've struggled with a lot the past few weeks is, do I take my bench points? And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to get it out of the way. I'm going to just throw the front end in so I don't really have to make the decision, right? And so I was really rooting for Portland to score, which is something I never do. Um, but with that game, Portland became the first team in MLS history, and this is tweeted out by a Timbers person, so you can fact check them. They became the first team in MLS history to score multiple goals in 5 straight games and lose them all. And that was really fun for me to learn. So
to your point, Ashley, they going back to the keeperoo, and we'll talk.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about it with player picks, but last week was kind of a lose with any kind of keeperoo. The schedule was brutal, and didn't really leave a ton of options. I know a couple people pivoted to the Dallas keeper after their bench hit or didn't hit. Like the clean sheet was gone.
Yep, once Free Scott scored on for NYCFC.
Yep, and it was really early in the game.
Yes.
So
yes.
I know a lot of people. I pivoted as well. I just got the wrong end of that. I got the red card end of it. But I mean, you gotta try to something, right?
Yeah.
And, but it was pretty much lose for any kind of keeper last week.
We talked a little bit last week about, is this the week that you single keeper it? But for someone who didn't need the money, I just thought, okay, I'm gonna throw. The only keeper option is one of the LA keepers, and so I'll just figure out which one I want and just roll with it. But then I also got stuck with Free starting, right, because I'd already used my bench and stuff. So it was a trickier one. This upcoming round plays a little more kindly into the keeper, not a ton more, but a little more.
I agree.
You could easily make it happen this round. So
yes, there's just not as many options, and not that there have been in the new era of Apple TV scheduling. Right, we're never gonna see like a 60-40 split, right, of how these things shape out. So getting 3 games, I guess I should say, so 6 teams to choose from is a pretty decent keeperoo. I guess you could say 4 if you count the 9:30 game. That 3 math is hard, Reed. We gotta just go West Coast.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It happens. The quick way I'm going to wrap up this segment is talking about clean sheets. They have been super hard to predict this season because that's been the name of the game. It's been, without these bonus points, that's been what people have tried to go with. And the question that I saw on Twitter that made me think about this today is someone said that their defense continues to struggle week after week. What do I need to look for improvement? And the short answer and the honest answer is it's kind of a crapshoot. Is really what it comes down to. Because I mean, as we've seen, strange clean sheets can happen. Unexpected players can score. Cards can come out and just completely turn the tide of the game. But that is just the cards that we are dealt with this. What I hope is a more helpful answer, and guys, feel free to add in after this, is one you can check out over at the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. We do have a section of the Discord. It is in the let's see here, the odds, ranks, and stats section. That is the server that we have it in. It's right near the fantasy tools where we have the mega reference, but the odds, ranks, and stats section, frequently clean sheet chances are shared in that channel. So if you want to check it out and see what some of the expert sites, some of the betting sites are looking at, that's one way you can go to check it out. Oftentimes, we have a few teams that we like to bet against, usually thinking that they have better chances of keeping clean sheets or those teams against them have better chances of keeping clean sheets. And then also targeting those home teams, because that's just where the better chances for clean sheets are always going to lie, at least with the data sets that are available with MLS currently. It favors the home team. So looking at the home teams, looking at the odds, and then betting against those teams. Other than that, is a starting attacker injured? Those sorts of things. That's always going to play into it. We have a couple of the go-to players that we always mention on this podcast, but if you're just straight up clean sheet hunting, find the cheapest player on the team, get into that defensive unit, and then set up your keeperoos and your switcheroos so that you get to preview some of those players first, and you can pivot after that. So there's no magic bullet for this. A lot of us are doing it this year. So if you're frustrated about your defensive performance, a lot of us were. I mean, I got 110 points, and I really only had one defender who hit for me, getting 6.
Yeah.
So it is not impossible, but you're not in a boat by yourself. Everyone is struggling trying to find the value of defenders, which will absolutely be part of the feedback that we provide to MLS about this season. Anything you guys want to add?
I think I'd just say, I will echo what you said. The only defender I had with a shutout this week was Brooks Lennon. Everybody else did not get a shutout. I had a defender get bonus points, Thiago Martins, and my goalkeeper picked up 1 bonus point. So for me, I'm really heavily focused on who's picking up bonus points. And I know we've had a lot of conversations about, Lennon and Wagner and those types of players. And that's kind of something that I'll do when I like a team's clean sheet chances. I'll look through and see, well, who's picking up the bonus points, and whoever that is, that's who I kind of do the opposite of what you said, going cheap. I'll say, I want to pick up the defender that gets the most bonus points, who's usually the most expensive on a team whose clean sheets I like. So if they don't get a clean sheet, Kai Wagner, Thiago Martins, at least I should get some bonus points, right? So I think I've had too much money for a while, and we're starting to get to the point where money doesn't matter as much. So I think it's harder to take that approach when money is still a factor, like when we're still dealing with price rises and everything. But generally for me, the only kind of data that I source out of that is what teams do I like for shutout and why, and who's getting the most bonus points. And sometimes I'll just throw like whoever my bench defender is, then I'll throw someone cheap or whatever on my bench who I think has a shutout, but I don't feel great about it, so they can get stuck there if I need them to, right? I also think a decent strategy, something that I don't ever feel comfortable with, but it's just a me hang up here, is running with a 2 scrub defense situation, so that one of your scrubs that comes in or from your bench has to be a defender. I see people do that a lot, where they kind of set themselves up so one of the 2 defenders on their bench has to scrub in. And I think that kind of helps you take some pressure off not getting a clean sheet, if that makes sense. But that setup always makes me nervous. I hate when the only scrub that can come in for me is a defender. It just gives me anxiety. But I think it works out a lot in situations like this, where we're just not seeing as many shutouts. The league is getting better. It's growing. You just don't see as many shutouts. And for anyone who's played in like Bundesliga leagues or EPL leagues, it's really hard to clean sheet hunt there, right? Like it's really, really hard. And so I think we're just getting a little bit of that now too.
Anything to add, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Reed, you had some great, like, kind of like the key factors that you look for when you're clean sheet hunting with the odds. I know a lot of people look at the bookmaker odds. So pick a winner, try to stay with the home teams, and then, like you said, you're looking at both sides of the matchup. You're looking at the opponents as to, like, maybe they're missing an attacker, maybe their form is awful. Like, you're looking at some kind of key like that, and there's probably about, I don't know, you guys can correct me, but there's probably like 3 or 4 teams that you're kind of picking at each week.
Yeah.
Especially if they're away, right? And then it changes throughout the season, obviously, but and then you're looking at, I mean, there's again, a handful of reliable defenses that you talked about Columbus. It feels like their structure and the way they play tends to be more defensively sound than some other teams. And I think I would Cincinnati hasn't had as many clean sheets this year, but like I would consider Cincinnati, like you saw Kip Keller come in for Miles Robinson earlier in the season, and it was almost like obviously wasn't watching every game, but it was almost like from the stat sheet they weren't missing a beat. You know what I mean? Because they keep like they run 3 center backs. They have, so it's a little more of a tight knit unit back there. Like it's just the structure of the team itself is more conducive to keeping clean sheets. And so I think those factors are huge, Reed. And then Ashley, I think a lot of the stuff that you were saying about the different strategies on how to set up your team is big thing. I've noticed a lot of people are running the 5 at the back with the 2 scrubs.
Yeah, the auto-roo, if you will.
Yeah, I personally don't think that is as conducive to clean sheet hunting. I like to have the 3 with a couple of maybe scrubbable type players in my lineup, and then have those 2 defenders on the bench if I'm clean sheet hunting. If I'm just putting in Brooks Lennon, Kai Wagner, and maybe a scrubbable guy, then I'm not doing as much clean sheet hunting if I'm looking for those bonus point producers like you were talking about.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit of a different strategy per se. And not that one is any less viable, but I think if you're actually doing that like hardcore clean sheet hunting, more bites at the apple, use that bench, and pray really.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that question. It was a great question to come from a listener. Very, very relevant. We feel it. And with hope, we'll have some interesting conversations about players this week. But first, we're going to talk about the housekeeping coming up from round 11 right after this. Don't worry, Ashley. I hit the recording button. So
I heard it right when I came on. I thought it was like destiny. It was literally the second I got there.
It was all good. Everybody was very good about it. Gene always reminds me, so it's all good. Let's see here. Coming up through here. Congrats on the rescinded red card.
It felt right.
It did. I agree.
It felt right,
I agree. All right, let me get the social.
Did you see Seattle beat Philly tonight?
I did. Matt announced it at the beginning of the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I was listening on my drive home.
It was a pretty
iPhone user. Oh God, it got so close. It
was a pretty banger match. It was
nuts. Yeah, because Godsek scored the tire read, and they called him offside, and he was offside. But for a second, my heart was just like, oh, you guys blowing a 3-0 lead is just. Oof.
Let's see here.
Fun for neutrals.
100%. Yeah, it was a really fun game. Really fun game for neutrals for sure.
All right, well, let's hit up this. All right, social is out for second segment. So, again, if you guys do share those, please do. Happy to have that shared. Hello and welcome back to our housekeeping segment coming into round 11. A quick recap of our leagues for the MLS Fantasy Boss Pro Rel Pyramid of Leagues. Champions League, we have Wojo at the top with a record of 10-0-0, the only undefeated player left in that league right there. Good job. Veterans League, we have 4 teams tied at 8-0-2, so that is getting whittled down. Over to the Homegrown League, Ashley with 10-0-0. So our 2 undefeated Pro Rel champions here right now. Or leaders, not champions. You're leaders right now.
I was going to say, don't call the vote.
Right?
Don't call the vote,
Over in the Discovery League, we have 2 teams tied at 9-0-1. So getting tighter right there as well. Moving over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Network of Leagues. Our Discord head-to-head league, we have 3 players tied at 10-0-0. Over in the Patreon head-to-head, we have Garth Butchers is the only player with 10-0-0 in that league, and he is leading the way. And then over at the MLS Fantasy Insider Experts Invitational League, we have 4 teams tied at 8-0-2. That is how competitive that one is. 8-0-2, and it's Wojo who is winning by points in that league as well.
I got smoked this week, but that's okay.
Hey, that's what knocks you down out of there to be with the rest of us.
It was another top 10 player, so kudos.
I am rounding off that top 4 who have 8-0-2 because it's all by points. So I'm squeaking in there. So we'll see what happens this week with those results. But yeah, very, very tight as expected. And a special shout out to Matt Pollard, who did very well in his fantasy team this week after I was on holding the high line, helping throw out some tips for that game. So good job to everyone there. Moving on to round 11. Everything starts Saturday, May the 4th. Be with you. At 7:30.
And also with you.
And thank you so much. So it starts May the 4th at 7:30 p.m. with a lot of teams. This is, as we have come to say, not the usual Apple TV kickoff schedule right here. We don't have that early game. We have a bunch of teams playing at 7:30. We have 3 teams playing at 8:30, 1 at 9:30, and then 1 team playing at 10:30. That is Vancouver versus Austin. That team will be the easiest team on Saturday for you to use to activate any kind of switcheroos. Going over, we do have 2 teams playing on Sunday, May the 5th, Revenge of the 5th. We have New York and Colorado kicking that off at 4, and then Seattle and LA Galaxy rounding it off at 6:45. So clearly, those teams will also be able to be used for your switcheroos and keeperoos. So those 2 teams and the Vancouver-Austin game at 10:30 on Saturday are going to be the easiest teams to use to help activate the keeperoo. To help you implement those keeperoos, no one is on a double game week. We already covered that at the top of why this is not a DGW round. But Columbus is on a bye week. So those players, because they're playing tomorrow in Champions League, so those players will be able to be utilized to help you activate any of the aroos that you may wish to do. Not all of them are as cheap as some of the other players. They're not all 4.5 if you're trying to do that. So head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. You can also check out the mega reference to find out some of the safe players who are not going to be in the game anymore if you are really that hard up for cash. But otherwise, they got some 4.9 defenders if you've got some extra cash lying around to be able to feed that. But Columbus will easily help you activate those switcheroos and those keeperoos.
Can I also say that our first real double game week round is 2 rounds away. Round 13 is a true Wednesday in the weekend, like full on, just so people can get their heads around it. It's coming up.
Yeah, no, we have that right around the corner, and it's going to be a pretty good one as well. A lot of teams in a double going to see some huge scores, so be sure to listen for the round 13 on Monday because that will come out as quickly as we can so that you can have that information going into the Wednesday round. But this week, even though some teams maybe as far as conditioning goes will be on a double, or rotations may be on a double for the points, not on a double. So let's move into the suspension and injury report provided by the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord community and coming to us curated by Ranchinator tonight for Tyler. Good news, Diego Chara sets the all-time single club appearance record. Also good news, Tyler.
And then got a red card.
But good news, Tyler, Lucho Acosta became the all-time leading scorer for FC Cincinnati, and I saw it happen. Yeah. So there we go. Good news all around.
Gazdag just became the all-time leading scorer for the Philadelphia Union tonight as well, just while we're passing out compliments.
So there we go. Good things happening for good people. Moving on for red cards and suspensions. Yellow card accumulation warning. Roldan had 1 game added from the Disco community, so he will miss 1 extra game. Ricky Pooch is on a yellow card accumulation suspension, so look out for him. Fry had his red card rescinded, as we mentioned earlier, so he should be available. If you did not see him starting tonight, that's because of weird rules due to which players can start during a makeup game. So that's why that happened. Remember, he was injured near the beginning of the season, so that's it.
He will start on Sunday.
There we go. So absolutely
you heard it here first.
Noah Eli, New York Red Bulls, is on a red card. Griffin Dorsey from Houston is on a red card, and Diego Chara from Portland is on a red card. So that is going to be playing into...
Yes, this is the one nice thing I think I'll ever say. I honestly got teary-eyed about it, which is so stupid because I'm not one of those types of people. All of the Timbers players, when they jogged out for Diego Chara is a notorious shirt tucker, which is something I'm a big fan of. And all of the Timbers players came out in warm-up shirts with his name and number on the back with all of their shirts tucked in. And I thought that was just the most adorable thing to do to celebrate the all-time appearance game. And I loved it so much. Not fantasy related, I just wanted to say I thought it was awesome.
I did not see that, but that is very nice. I mean, Ray Gaddis was that way, so I have a good spot for that as well. So well played, Classy, right there. Some big names that are on yellow card watch, just as we're coming up there. Emmanuel, well, there's no one on the yellow card. That's going to be factoring into the double game week. So that these players, this section will change as we get up there. Injuries. Emmanuel Reynoso, update. He's expected to be sold in the summer. So he's still in Argentina and refusing to return to Minnesota. Shocker, right? Can we say shocker?
I mean, it's not. I just hadn't heard that official news.
Oh,
Christian,
sure.
Please send me the link. Send me some links, please, Christian. Wow. What a
craziness. As Ashley mentioned earlier, Jovelik has a thigh injury, and so he was out. As I mentioned, DeAndre Yedlin, no official word yet, but like I said, he was limping a lot after that knock, so I wouldn't be surprised if he missed some time. Thiago Martins was knocked out cold, perhaps a concussion, so keep an eye on his availability if you're looking at New York players. Bracalo over at Orlando has a knee injury. Danny Musovski in Seattle. I'm sure I butchered that.
Musovski.
There you go.
I don't know why. I only know it because I hear it.
There you go. He has a hip injury. Evander. I'm glad Tyler had this because I was trying to find out more about this. Evander did not play last week. Apparently, it is a leg injury, but that was definitely a mentioned, especially.
Be vaguer, please.
Yeah, well,
leg injury.
It's
lower. Why don't they just call it a lower body injury? Like that's so vague.
I'm sure it could be more vague if we wanted to, but he had a leg injury, did not play, was not in the 18. So keep an eye on that. Very essential to Portland's success right there. And then Nacho Heel had a meniscus tear, but is not the Carles heel that many of us were looking for right there. So those are all of the big updates right there. And so if you want to keep up to date on who is in and who is out, or have some updates to pass on yourself, you can head over to MLS Fantasy Boss Discord, go down to the Fantasy Tools section and go to the Mega Reference, where we have this information and a whole lot of other helpful tools and tips that you can check out to help you get your team ready for each fantasy round. The easiest way to become a member and check out the Discord is to head to MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. It's fun, it's free, and some of the best players in the game, like Wojo and Ashley and Christian and all the other guests and names that you hear on this show, hang out there, answer questions, and it's just a fantastic time. So head over there, MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. But coming up next, what I know a lot of you all are tuning in to listen for, and there we go, get those words right. Those are the player targets that we have going into round 11 right after this.
Spencer's rewatching the game. I'm just going to pop my head out real quick because I can tell he's at the point where Philadelphia have scored at least 2 goals.
All right, let's see here. Last week, actually,
How you doing, Ben?
Good. We've almost scored twice.
Yep.
Does he not know? Does he not know?
No, we never do this. We absolutely never watch a game, but he threw his phone and had Sawyer turn the game on for him and all that. He's checked out. He's on the some point in the second half right now.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Oh, let me get the stuff changed and fade in for that. Let me get the social right here. Where'd it go? Here it is. Week. Social. All right, social is out for this last segment. Thanks everyone for sharing that if you do, and also thanks for sticking around. Going to have some good discussion now that I hope. So here we go. Hello and welcome back to our final segment. Hello and welcome back to our final segment where we're going to be talking about the players who we are targeting going into round 11 with the information that we have at this time. Starting as always with keepers and defenders. Matt, who are you looking at?
I think we were all pretty consensus about some of the teams that we were looking at. As we mentioned, a lot of these, as opposed to last week, there's actually some options this week, which is the big ones for me are so Nashville on the front end, which is nice. It's so nice that we can use an 8:30 Eastern game, so like the middle range of times as a bench play, which is usually not an option for us. So Nashville taking on Montreal. I know Nashville's defense has been a little iffy, but the hope is that Zimmerman's going to be back. I think that's going to be a big key as to whether or not that's going to be viable. And that'll certainly go into my thinking, right? So, but the cool thing is we can also use the 10:30 for the front, which is 10:30 Eastern, the late game, for a bench play if you want, which is nice to actually use any game Saturday for a bench play if you really want to. So Vancouver's another team. They're playing better. I mentioned earlier, Ashley, before you came on, they've won 4 of their last 5. Can you believe that?
Yeah. I know.
Are they better? But a lot of those were home games, so different animal, still a different animal away. Not putting up a whole lot of XG, and some of the other metrics they're not really hitting very well. But so that's an option. So Takaoka as the either on the front end or the back end of Aru is an option, and then Freeze is really the kind of the third option. I know Colorado is they're doing pretty solid, but just something about New York City's home form, especially lately. They've got a nice little homestand that they've had the last 4 or 5 games, and they've gotten some clean sheets out of it. And so they're another one of those teams that doesn't give up a ton of goals. So they're always kind of like that defensively solid team if they've got their pieces. Again, Martins and his concussion is something to keep an eye out for. And then another keeper that I wanted to throw out as a possibility. Not sure how I feel about it, but Toronto versus Dallas. Dallas has just been kind of poor, and so it was last week enough to jumpstart them. They just don't seem to have any kind of firepower and attack, and so I think Toronto could kind of be an under the radar clean sheet pick. And obviously, I mean, we talked about different strategies for the defenders. Obviously, Lennon's going to be in most people's reckoning because of the home game, because of the floor, because of his ceiling. But then, you got the Vancouver picks. Ashley, I really liked what you mentioned about, or I can't remember if it was you or Reed, but one of you guys mentioned getting in just like the lowest guy on one of those defenses. Pick a defense that you like. If you can't afford the highest BP guy, I mean, Zimmerman's pretty cheap now, but like normally it would be him for Nashville, right?
Sure.
But if you can't afford that person, just get in somewhere. Lovett's on Nashville's like 4.3 units, I think.
Yeah.
Crazy, especially since he was taking free kicks last year. I don't know if he still is. I have to check, but anyway, hold on a second, guys. Sorry, I've got my assistants are super loud.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah. But so yeah, just looking at players from those teams again, Zimmerman, Lovett's for Nashville, Blackman or Ranko for Vancouver. The Risa from New York is still super cheap. It's crazy that some of these guys are still under 6, really.
Yeah, they've either gone through runs of injury or the team has gone through runs of bad form, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so those are just some of the guys. I kind of like Houston this week. I don't necessarily feel super confident in the clean sheet, but Michael Dos Santos from Houston is a high BP guy. might be worth it if you maybe need a backup or a bench guy and want to take a chance.
They're missing Dorsey, so I think a lot of that depends on who comes in for him.
Yeah.
Right, because they have some good bench
center backs. You know, they run the 3
Yeah.
center backs with the wing backs and then the 2 defensive midfielders in front of them.
Mhm.
So it's a pretty solid structure.
Yep, for sure.
But they've also had some issues as well. But
Yeah. But
so
he's been a great bonus point producer, Mikal.
yes. So those are kind of some of the teams that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I have a very similar kind of view as Matt, and I honestly, even when I'm the first one to kind of put picks in, I'll try to come back and look before we start to try to differentiate. And this week was a little hard for me to pick anything crazy different. Matt has been more successful than me this year, but I feel like every time we've had you on, we've had almost the exact same train of thought. So I'll try to branch out a little bit, but I also I don't want to say I'm only, but for me, if Walker Zimmerman starts, it's a Willis bench keeper, and if he doesn't, I'd move into a Takioka because there's no other, like the timing doesn't work for anything else. I personally have not had success when picking Vancouver defense, and that's not to say that they haven't been a successful defense, but when I've gone Takioka, he hasn't hit for me. He's had some bonus points, but I get kind of superstitious like that the more we get into the season. So I'd prefer to go Willis on the front end, and then I'm not necessarily picking against Colorado with the Freese starting, but more just picking for NYCFC at NYCFC, right? That's where they have the most success. They're in a decent run of forms. If Thiago Martins is out, I might move away from Freese, but I'm not sure. I don't know their defense well enough to kind of make that decision, so I would probably just hope my bench hit. But, you know, Colorado has only been shut out once this entire year. They've scored a goal home and away in every game except, I can't remember who it was, but they're not winning, but they are scoring more than you'd think. But for me, it's more about NYCFC's form at home. For defenders, I also really like Lennon. He's hardly ever been out of my team. I think I've moved him to the bench a couple of times, but he hasn't left my roster maybe once this season. I'm looking at the NYCFC pairing as well, depending on Martins and that injury. I personally, from the Vancouver lineup, am going Veselinovic. I'm also looking at Anelli for RSL, who, what a price rise that guy has had, because he came in so cheap, and now I think he's 7.5, and has just, you know, it has been a great, you know, point producer. For averaging 4.7 a game is pretty decent for a defender. And then I know I sound like such a shithead, but I am considering an LA Galaxy player that I would scrub if my bench hits. So I just want to say that before all the Sounders people yell at me more. I don't know how strongly I feel about that anymore. That's kind of the team when I look at, I prefer to fill out, I think you do this too, Matt. I prefer to fill out a full team and then know going into it who I'd scrub if my bench hits. Just for like price reasons and moving things around, right? I think that this season I've only had to do it twice. Like I've only had to actually play without a scrub twice. But that's how I like to play it out. And so for me, when I'm looking at these later games, I really do lean Galaxy, but they're on the road. They're not a great defense, and Seattle is actually scoring now. There was a good stretch of this year where I was definitely saying that you can bet against Seattle because they're just not scoring goals. But while they've had a decent amount of penalties, they do seem to maybe be clicking again. So I might turn away from that. But right now, I have Ayoud as my would-be scrubbed fifth defender.
No, you guys are right. We have a lot of similarities to our picks this year, so just kind of going on thought process. Willis, Freese, Takaoka, yeah, I think those are a lot of the go-to because of the reasons you all mentioned, because of the way they line up with the schedule this week. Love the Johnson call-out. I think that's that's a great stealth one. Not stealth, just under the radar pick right there. I'll call out right now some of the defensive stats that we have available through the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord in the odds, rankings, and stats section that I mentioned earlier. With the clean sheet probability predictions, New York City FC and Vancouver stand at the top. That's why a lot of us are looking at those teams. Of course, you know my history with Vancouver and trusting their clean sheets right there. Right after them, just a few percentage points below, Dynamo, Nashville, and RSL, who have not been mentioned just yet. Now, some of this stuff could be budget motivated. I know Willis is very cheap if you're still trying to eke out some points right there. The only I'm going to take issue with the Dynamo on here, and I get why they're on there. I think that's mostly against St. Louis, where they've not been able to produce a lot of goals, but the Dynamo have a weak defense. They've kept a few clean sheets this season, but they've allowed goals. They have not been consistent, and so I think that's a flyer. I don't think that's a team you go heavy on. Maybe you pick up one, but I think that's a riskier one. They are at home, so I couldn't blame you, but I'm a little skeptical of that one. Nashville, we've already covered. RSL, I worry about RSL. I like their attack. They can get clean sheets, absolutely. But I feel like Sporting Kansas City has been on a good turn of form where they've been finding goals. They have some players back into the lineup now that Johnny Russell was out. Johnny Russell's back again. And so I mean, they've got some offensive teeth. And I don't know if RSL holds them to a shutout. So that one seems risky for me as well. I'm currently on New York City as some of my bench players for that. I am skeptical. Colorado had some good opportunities against Cincinnati. They had their goal coming in off of a set piece, so they've got some set piece danger as well. And that's always a coin flip of what can and could not happen with that. So I don't think that's absolutely set in stone that they won't score. And I know also we mentioned Portland. At least I saw Portland mentioned in chat as well. I want to see what's happening with Evander. I mean, Mora's been coming through, getting some goals, but Evander has been such a heartbeat of that team. Will they be able to keep a road clean sheet to Charlotte? Will Charlotte be able to keep a clean sheet at home? That game, I think there's going to be goals both ways as well. So this one's going to be a difficult one where you are probably going to be looking again at trying to get into just some of those cheap defenders. Maybe a coin flip, since you're throwing coin flips out there, Matt, with Toronto. They've not been great. A lot of struggles. You talked about sounding the alarm. Maybe New England keeps a road clean sheet. Who knows? Dallas has got some players back, but took that early red card with Houston to really get it going. Do not do this. I'm just throwing some crazy stuff out there. I'm not going to have a New England player, but when I was going through the lineup being like, I don't know, maybe that's something ridiculous that could happen. So if you want to have fun with it, but I think we've covered a lot of the main people. A tool, I think the natural backup, if you are looking at that. Vasily Novik with Vancouver, I think, is the usual go-to that a lot of people have. Tends to play out of position. Other than that, I think that's all I'm going to mention with defenders and keepers. Nothing else I think really worth adding in chat. So let's move on to midfielders. Ashley.
Yeah, this one came a little easier for me. And I won't elaborate too much because, like I said, Matt and I went the same way. So I'll leave some of the reasoning to him. But for me, I threw in Lucho. I'm hopping on Mukhtar a week late. I wanted to see his form improve. I wasn't sure it would last week. It did. I think it was enough to keep him, especially against Montreal. Santi Rodriguez staying in my team. Almada, even though I was so frustrated, I know Atlanta's road form is so bad and blah, blah, blah. I still liked them. Gigi was coming back. I had him last week. He didn't produce, but still got a 7. So the floor is keeping him in my lineup as well. And then I'm reluctantly including Ryan Gauld, who has also not hit for me this week. This season, I'm not ready to Barrios him, but like he's coming into contention.
Matt.
I couldn't have said any of that better myself. Like, I don't know if you guys had the same experience that I did. Like, when I clear out my lineup at the beginning of the week, and then I just go through, and first thing I look for is home matchups. Obviously, the stronger home matchups, right? And it just seems like all the players that we've kind of been going to every week have are away or injured or suspended, or like something's going on that just made there's always one week that we have one position that we're just like, man, this is a little bit rough, right?
Yeah.
I think those that you named are going to be pretty chalky. Ashley, for great reason. I mean, Lucho is Lucho. Almada's got a floor back, it looks like. I mentioned this a little bit before you jumped on, Ashley, but he wasn't in preseason with Atlanta, so like it's gonna take him some time to get acclimated, and then he's got his floor back, which is really nice to see. Having another strong option in the midfield there. Santi's on a run. Mukhtar does make me a little nervous because I think Reed hit the nail on the head when he was talking about we expected more from that San Jose game. Like he should have been double digits, which I think he had 9, which is pretty close. But he should have been. I don't know. Maybe I expected more key passes from him. I'm still not sure exactly what he's going to be doing with this new scoring system, but it's a pretty good matchup given the options the home options that are out there. And then I'm on Gald. He's a guy that you can use as like a late scrub just in case. But between his form is aside from the Red Bull game, they were at Red Bull, which is tough. But he's got 10, 10, 8, 9 the last 4 weeks before that, and man, Vancouver, I know Reed has issues with their defense, but like, do they not feel like this super, like under the radar good team? At least for the past couple of years, they've always
since Sartini got there.
I'm on a different coast, so I don't follow them as closely as I probably should, but it just seems like the last couple of seasons, they've just put together some really solid teams. And with some viable fantasy assets. And Gald, obviously one of the more exciting ones. I don't think I'm going to scratch him. I think I'll just keep him because I like that matchup a lot for him. I wanted to name out a couple of other players, though, that might not be as chalky. I know Espinoza's gotten some love in the Discord so far this week. That's it's San Jose. They're at home. It's not. LAFC's defense is not amazing, so there's potential for some BPs for him. Hector Herrera has gotten some minutes the past 2 games. What's he going to look like with the new scoring system? That's a solid offensive matchup, at least for Houston. Bassi as well. Has been scoring really well. Houston just hasn't been scoring a lot, so I don't know that I see ceilings there. Let's see. I mean, Carlos Heald is away, but it's not a super hard matchup. Reed was talking earlier about targeting Chicago. It didn't work for Atlanta, but Almada still pulled a 7.
New England are just so bad, and I'm definitely not disagreeing with you because I want Carlos Heald at Chicago, right? I want to want him, but they are bad. He seems to be like kicking in some late BPs in a game, hitting a 5, maybe a 6, making it feel not terrible. But New England are the worst that they've ever been since he's been there, by far, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So it's just, and again, I'm not trying to disagree because I looked at that matchup and I was like, I want him, right? Like, shouldn't I? But, and I mean, he hasn't crashed and burned, but he hasn't hit double digits since week 1.
No, his ceiling has definitely come down, either because of the scoring or the team or both. It's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for midfielders, though, as far as I'm concerned. But those are kind of the ones that I've thought about.
Well, and the hope for Heel is that perhaps there's enough missing in Chicago that it's going to be worth it with all of that there. So, I'm on a lot of the same note as a lot of you guys are. Heel is likely in a 5th spot for me, 6th spot if I would be honest with that. Players like Santi and Gald are the reason that I'm not going in with all 3 for defenders with Santi, Gald, and Mukhtar. Those are 3 players from defensive teams that we mentioned, or teams that we've mentioned had some defensive upside based on some of the stats. But I think those offensive players are worth it to not go 3 deep on a defense with your stack right there. So other players that I'll add that we haven't mentioned, very much a flyer. Just looking at some of the other teams, Rusnak has not done fantastic, but in the game so far has had a game tonight, so there could be some rotations, but keep an eye on what's happening with Seattle.
He didn't start. He came in late, and he's on a lot of set pieces. So it's something to
keep an eye on now that Seattle is getting some goals.
And he's cheap, right? Isn't he? He's pretty cheap.
He is 8.4.
He's also scrubbable. So
he's in that late game.
Fallback. Yep. The Galaxy defense is on the road. It's really strong.
Yeah, the Galaxy defenses. You could always go with someone like Paintsel if you think that's going to play out, but with Pooch out with cards and Jovelik questionable, that doesn't seem like necessarily it's going to pay off. So take that as you will there. I'll also mention Busquets has been getting some points. They are going to be home to Red Bulls, so I'm not sure where all the goals are going to come from. I don't think I put him in my top 5, but I have seen him in some teams that people have shared in Discord, and I get why. I'm trying to hop on that Messi goal scoring train, but I don't know if we're going to see. Red Bulls are not New England, even on the road, so I feel like they won't be quite as leaky as we saw with New England there. And then also the same thing with Gazdag. He has the pedigree, he has the potential to go off. Did play, look for rotations in what could happen with Philadelphia. They're on the road to DC. So that's a big game for there. But I think Gazdag's someone always worth in the consideration. Again, probably going to be someone on your bench that you're hoping to come in for one of these switcheroos or autoroos right there. I did see this mentioned in chat, so I'll just holler out this right now. It was mentioned that San Jose's new DP number 10 has been acquired.
I'm excited.
That is Hernan Lopez. Yeah. And he is not in the game, so not going to be an option fantasy-wise. I'm not sure of the status of him actually playing his first game here, but of course,
I have no idea.
When he does play, we will need to reevaluate San Jose at that time to see what impact he may have.
Give me Olivier Giroud right now.
We will be doing a lot. If you would like to have Ashley do a little article piece about Giroud coming into the season, just like and subscribe, put a response in the comments, and we'll make that happen.
A little more than soccer.
Yeah, I told Reed, he said you should write an article about him. I'm not like a big Giroud stat person, I'm not an Arsenal fan or whatever, right? He said you should write a fantasy article about him, and I said I don't think it'd be the type of fantasy article you're looking for.
Yeah, so we'll have to monitor that, but
an appropriate fantasy article.
Happily married, but still.
I'm an Arsenal fan, and I've seen enough of him to know.
Yes.
I slightly agree with you.
Oh my gosh, this is going off the rails.
Sorry,
we can't have this. So if you want to check out something less chalky, just stay tuned for Team Ranchinator's article later this week. So let's move on to forwards now. Matt, who are you looking at?
Oh man, should we just talk about the chalk, y'all?
It's good chalk.
So the chalk is great. I do want to. So I'll throw out the chalk, and I actually have a question for both of you because it was something that I was having a discussion earlier in Discord about. So obviously Messi. If he's starting, he's in your lineup. Y'all don't get cute. Just captain the guy. like you're gonna hate yourself and have so much regret.
Yeah.
If you don't. Just like we're all gonna have him. You might as well, right?
Yes.
So obviously that's the first one. I could see how. So I don't love the Red Bull matchup enough to like double up with Suarez this week,
Yeah.
but it is an option. So the second one is Chicho Arango. I think he's been really good. He's been really good, and I don't think any of us that have seen him play for LAFC are surprised. Super strong pick. I think he's going to be in every team. And then I'm kind of going back and forth on this third pick, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw out some lower cost picks for some people just in case they're looking. And then I want to ask you guys another thing. So a couple of the other guys, GG should be back and playing home game. Rui Diaz, who had the brace tonight, is still relatively good price. We talked about the Galaxy defense, and then a couple of lower price guys. Kerwin Vargas. These are total reaches. These are like bench plays. But if you're looking for like good matchups for lower priced guys, Charlotte has Portland, and we talked about like they're giving up a couple goals a game every game they're away. Like again, you're not gonna build your team around them, but it's a good flyer, a good low price flyer. Same with Hugo Kuipers. From Chicago. I mean, I'm not going to give he's due, but in the other fixture, he scored against New England, so at New England, and so somebody also in Discord we had a conversation that like New England are just giving up tons of goals to center forwards, so. Again, I think he's below 7 or something like that, or he's at least below 8. So it's a good price point if you're trying to fit him in your team. Most of us aren't dealing with prices at this point, but good options. So here's my question. I am battling. I love Vancouver right now, and Brian White is one of the most underrated forwards in the game to me.
Agree.
His consistency, at least, his ceiling he hasn't really been hitting that. But with so many Vancouver options, obviously Denny Bouanga's out there, right? And I think he's going to be pretty chalk for people. What do you guys think about his like home form versus away form? I know it's San Jose, but it's away, but it's not that far. Like, give me thoughts on Denny Bouanga this week.
I'm not a good. I'll take this first as the resident Mwanga homer read. My husband made a funny to me comment the other day because I was a collegiate level goalkeeper, and playing fantasy, I'm always obsessed with the douchiest strikers. I still talk about Tati Castellanos, and he's been gone for several seasons. Like, I just love these like flashy, kind of in your face strikers, which is something as a player I always hated. But Denis Bouanga this season, I think the LAFC team has had some away form issues. Denis Bouanga, I don't feel has necessarily had goal scoring issues, but he's blanked away from home. So he's racking up the goals. He had a road assist week 1, but he hasn't had a goal contribution on the road all season. He's hit some bonus points, and they had the snow game, which I kind of think you should chalk off from perspective in general, but like that is a stat. He has not had a goal contribution on the road since round 1, but he is currently in form. So I think it just depends on what data comes into play for you more. He's got 4 goals in 4 games, but he hasn't scored on the road. So do we come into, I know this is not to steal from your own tagline, Matt, but is he due? Is he due a road goal at this point, right? But San Jose defense is not great. San Jose is not great. So, but he also didn't score at Portland. He also didn't score at Colorado. So I don't know. He's in my team, to kind of cut to the end. He's in my team right now, but I do think that there are more suitable for the round strikers than Denis Bouanga. It just depends on what you're kind of valuing more. That hasn't scored away all season, line, or the fact that he's 4-4.
Yeah, I just think it's a funny conversation because his point home versus away are so stark.
It's like crazy.
We're talking like 20-point ceiling at home.
Yep.
And we're talking. Don't get me wrong. Nice floor, even away from home, he's getting 5s.
Yes, exactly.
Which may be the answer right there. You know what I mean? If you can guarantee 5 out of your forward, away from home, that's a pretty nice. Because if he does score, he's double digits easy.
Right.
And then also, obviously, you're trying to fit as many Vancouver players in as possible.
Sure.
Is forward one of those places because there's other options? So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely other strikers to consider. Like if you're also going to talk hot hand, is Rui Diaz a striker you consider? In seasons past, which we've definitely learned is not always an indicator, but in seasons past, his home form, especially against conference rivals like LA, LAFC, Portland, has been high. And he is scoring, albeit mostly PKs, but still. So if you're someone who really rides that home striker, are you looking at a guy like Rui Diaz this week who's in form? Or are you looking at a guy like Gigi who should be starting, is what I've seen at least, should be starting at home against Minnesota, who is a good team, but not like the craziest defense right now. So I think it just kind of depends on what one of those data lines are the ones that mean the most to you. Home, away, or hot hand, right? Like I think that's kind of going to dictate. Because I have all the strikers that you mentioned, but I'm definitely less confident in Bouanga than if it was a home game. And I'm also considering Gigi or Rui Diaz to fill that spot. So,
I mean, you also got to consider budget. If I had Bouanga in my team with the lineup that I want, I'm 1.5 million over budget.
I wish I could loan you money.
So
I wish that was
for
a thing
some of us. There's still a thing there as well.
You're so close. Couple more rounds, Reed, and it'll all be over.
Yeah, we'll see. I think there's some players you could flex. I mean, I'm really looking at GG as well, trying to bet against potentially Minnesota to see it. That's the flex spot though. Like, I've got to make cuts someplace else if I wanted to get Bouanga, because I think Messi and Arango are two players that I absolutely want to have in my team this round, and then it's see where to go from there. I think White's a great shout out. I think Benteke is one that we mentioned earlier, talking about that big game against Philly, after Philly having this midweek game.
2 home defeats in 4 days, Philly.
Yeah. So there's definitely options that are out there. I think these are definitely the top 5 or 6 people. I've seen Owusu mentioned in chat for Toronto, 7 million. He's got 4 goals in 3 games. Even though some of those not always coming up with huge points, but yeah, I mean, if you're looking for someone to ride something hot going up against Dallas, we still don't rate Dallas very highly, so I think there can be goals for Toronto in that game. I don't know if he displaces one of the other players that we've spoken about already, though. So pretty chalky there at forwards, and another likely captain pick. So let's just move on to that for the captain target. So who are you all targeting? I think we're all targeting the same person. Mm-hmm. Should we say it on 3? 1, 2, 3. Messi. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, Matt said it. If he starts, you're captaining him, especially a home game against a good team, but not an invincible team.
Yeah.
I just think the ceiling is if you don't do it and he hits any kind of ceiling,
Yeah.
you're in trouble.
Yes.
Everybody
Yeah.
else.
I know.
Drop far.
I saw some verbiage of, oh, Suarez isn't starting. Should we not captain Messi? And I was just like, no, he doesn't need anyone. He doesn't. They could play the kids, and I'd still captain him if he was starting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You don't start Suarez if Messi's not in there.
Sure,
But
exactly.
that-
It's
that's-
the other way around. Yeah.
That's worked out. So who's your number 2 if he does not start, Ashley?
I literally haven't even thought about it, and I apologize because we're on Tuesday now at this point. I think it's probably Arango, probably, which is so weird to go from a striker to a striker. That's so not us, Reed. But I think that would probably it. I think you could make a case for Gald, but like I said, Gald makes me uneasy. So I think I would pivot to Chicho.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm gonna ditto that. I mean, his ceiling is ridiculous. It's just, if you know he can hit 20, which he he almost has twice already. So
I will say the last home round of a predominant amount of people captained him, Shithead posted a 3 and then proceeded to go away to Chicago and light them up the next round. But the last time Chicho was a very popular captain, he got a 3. So not to bring up stats that are irrelevant, but
It happens. No, I'd agree. That would be my number 2 as well. I just was wondering if you guys would say Bawanga after the discussion that you just had. So there's that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all that we have for the show tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. One day later than normal, but still plenty of time to get your teams all set for this round. Remember, games start on Saturday. This is not a double game week, but it should be a fun week. So I hope that you feel prepared. Check out all the articles coming out before then, including the Discord player poll, which Christian already has up. So do that and check it out. But let's wrap things up with our plugs. Matt.
At Soccer Down Here, lots of soccer community down south. Also want to shout out Jason Wright and the Wright Agency. Been doing player picks for them in conjunction with Soccer Down Here. So just want to shout them out.
Ashley.
I have nothing, and I should be more prepared. I was rushed today because you're going to say Discord, so I feel like if I say Discord, then you won't have anything to say. So I'll say nothing, so you can say Discord.
See, you can always say Discord, and I can say Fantasy Boss.
Discord. I shout out Discord, as always.
MLSFantasyBoss.com for all of the articles that we have with Tyler's differentials and the already mentioned player poll that is out there on Discord. So thanks for joining us tonight for this episode, with hope that you got some good tips to help make your team more competitive, rise up in the ranks. But as always, good luck. And